I believe that. Not only am I excited to be here, but I'm excited to be here with Con, who this is our third Friday in a row. I've discovered that Con has a wealth of knowledge, experience, and a generous spirit in order to share. And what's been on top of mind for Con and myself and a few other people in our collaboration group is Con's book. And what's so important about Khan's book is it supports B2B LinkedIn strategy and live stream strategy because of the foundational elements of the book. So we're here to provide as many quality nuggets, valuable takeaways, and therefore chat's open. Love to hear what you have to say about anything that we're talking about or you'd like us to talk about. And also, what is your thoughts on the subject of LinkedIn, LinkedIn live streaming, B2B, all those things me and Con are thoroughly interested in and feel very qualified to address any questions you might have. With that, Con, welcome back. So happy to have you. Our previous shows has just been totally outstanding. Had some great guests with us, and next week, actually, Todd's going to be back on Friday with us. But I thought this would be a good week to be just me and you and focus on the elements and the matter at hand, which is the change in the world that's taken place, and how, based on the changes that you've experienced and seen, put together a quality book like this that's already number one bestseller in many categories. I'd love to, it's easier for me to toot Con's horn than to have him toot his own. And it feels better. And hopefully it feels better to you. So, Con, why don't you share a little bit about what it is we just talked about?
Sounds good. Well, first of all, good morning, Don. Good morning to our audience. Thank you for having me again. It's a pleasure to sit in the co-pilot seat here with you and to be part of this conversation. It seems like these Friday mornings are becoming quite our little together moment here that we share some wisdom, some nuggets, some experiences, some questions, some provocative thoughts, maybe even to kind of allow people to go into the weekend to reflect on what's happening and perhaps start their week a little stronger the following week. So today, you and I talked about it offline, but in preparing for our show, I found it, it just hit me. It's one of those moments where I'm thinking about the book, The Engagement Blueprint, that, as you rightfully said, just went out this past week on Tuesday as a Kindle. Tomorrow, it's actually going out in print. It's being released in print for both paperback and hardback. So I'm really, really excited about that. But in the midst of thinking about the content of the book and why I wrote the book and what I hope to get out of that book, and then preparing for our show about the LinkedIn Live strategy, about B2B, about how we're trying to approach this and how we're trying to earn the trust and win the hearts and minds of our audience, it just hit me. The whole reason I wrote the book was to help leaders really solve some key problems. I mean, leaders everywhere are looking around and saying, okay, I put my best into my team. I try to support my team. I try to do my best. For many business owners, they're investing a lot of their cash into that labor line, whether it's for salaries, for good salaries, for benefits, for different training development pieces, for all of the things that you know very well as an entrepreneur that business owners invest in their people. Well, for many of them that I've talked to, they don't always feel like they're getting the most out of their investment in their people. Call it what you will. After the pandemic, after the great resignation, after the big upheaval and the changes that we've seen in the workforce, there's a lot of people out there that are disengaged. There's a lot of people out there that are just going through the motions. There's very few. In fact, it's only 1 in 5 globally that are truly coming to work excited about being there. 3 out of 5 are just along for the ride. And one is actually so disappointed, disenfranchised, disheartened, and disengaged that they're actually becoming the cancer in your operation. So to me, I looked at those parallels. If I can write a book that's really making a difference in workplaces everywhere, and leaders are looking at it and saying, okay, I have now a blueprint to re-engage my team, to win over those people. Isn't that similar to what you and I do here through LinkedIn Live? Isn't LinkedIn Live one of the tools that we're trying to do to win the hearts and minds of our audience? So that is the premise that I'd love to talk about today.
Well, I'm right there with you, and I see a lot of other good friends are here. Looks like everybody's buying your book that knows you
Uh,
here. Hi, Don and Con, great to be here. Well, Don on the book, I've ordered my copy. Good for you, Harvey.
Thank you.
We all support each other. Leslie is here. Leslie has one of the most talked about live streams, which is Think and Grow Rich, which
Mm,
precedes this show, and Mind Over Matter. Leslie also supports so many of us
mm,
by promoting every one of our shows. So it's like, help each other, help each other. And, by association, that's a positive.
right.
People do it out of their generous heart versus obligation. Carl's here. Carl just ordered a book too. Good for you, Carl. And Carl has the instant funding show, I believe it is, has a most popular, relevant newsletter he puts out every day. If there's one win word for LinkedIn or live streaming, it's consistency. Keep showing up, keep doing it. It takes
Right.
a lot longer than you might think, but it all pays off because most people left the time you were going to leave and you stayed. So winning by default is a strategy too. Getting to Khan's book, what I'm so interested in is, Con and myself and the group got together a few months ago. We got to know each other. We share every other Thursday. And, Con was waiting for the right opportunity to have a show here. And then the book came up in a conversation with so many weeks ago. And I said, well, that's great because now we've got a definition of what we're trying to do. And what that is leveraging LinkedIn best practices, leveraging live streaming, best audiences in order to see how it can impact exposure, sales. And, once you can get real tangible results in a very short period of time from the time you actually put something into activity,
Mhm.
you start thinking, hey, what else can I promote? And because it works. Most people are unfamiliar with fast work, but when you're leveraging a huge population like this and you throw YouTube in, it's massive. So that's what's so intriguing to me is how many people have wonderful experience and books and courses, but can't get over the radar.
Right.
And it doesn't have any judgment on their creativity or talent or product. It's if no one sees it, it won't get seen. And I think that's where I'm shifting and the show is shifting. And that's why, in the past might not have been so promotional, but there's a difference between promoting something you believe in, that the person you believe in, and at that point, you're sharing, you're not selling.
Yeah.
Right. And you're adding how you feel about something, which only live streaming can show you the passion, the energy, the interest, and make you think, make you start to wonder, hey, if Con can do it, if Harvey could do it, if Leslie could do it, maybe I could do it. And I think that's important. Kerry's here. He's always got his joke. What is made of cheese and found in Scotland? The Loch Ness Monster. At least he always keeps it PG or less. Hello, Carl. Carrie says that. So Con, what is we were talking right before the show that all of this is really making you feel more optimistic.
Mhm.
And can you share what about this or what optimism are you feeling and experiencing?
So I'm optimistic because I know that there's an answer to this question about how do we create engaged workplaces? How do we create the kind of workplace, the kind of environment in general that we all want to be a part of, free of toxicity, a place where you're not just languishing, but you're actually flourishing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big part of it. And there are so many examples that I discovered through my work, either creating them with my clients or actually talking to other professionals that have success stories to share and doing interviews. And this is by no means limited to a particular industry, a particular country, a particular culture. It's universal. Why? Because when you're able to tap into the engagement needs of people, you realize they're human needs. They're not just worker needs. They're not just, a particular US needs. No, these are human needs and they're global needs. Let's take the example that we talked about here with B2B, with the LinkedIn Live strategy. What are we trying to do? In order to break through the noise, you have to win. You have to win the eyeballs and the engagement of people that want to come here. We have a wonderful, amazing group of people that show up almost every day now. You've built a community here, Don. And let's use that as a case study, as an example of what we're talking about. Why? Well, the first need that people have is the need to feel valued. Just the fact that you are acknowledging your audience here, you're bringing up their comments, you're encouraging them, you're saying, hey, first of all, I've created a safe space for you here. You can come in and there's safety here for you to be yourself, to show up, to express yourself, to put your questions forward in a respectful way. And why? Because you promote that respect. You show respect to your audience and you're saying, you know what? Hey, no matter where you're from, welcome. I
Mm-hmm.
respect you for being here. And for those that go above and beyond and choose to engage further and to contribute, not just consume the content, you are actually respecting them, showing them that added respect of that earned respect. Why? Because they're taking part in the show. They're playing an active role in this. They're not just sitting back and just taking it all in, but they're actually engaging further. So creating safety, showing respect, gratitude. You're always grateful for the people that are here. You're always grateful and happy to show up every morning. And that goes such a long way, Don. And then you look at it and you say, okay, I'm giving up my time. How many shows is it now? Well over 700?
Yeah, at least probably about 7:30 or so.
You think about that commitment that you've shown to people, to your team, to your community. And people know that they can show up at 9 o'clock pretty much every day. Now it's 5 days a week instead of 7. But they know they'll show up at 9 Mountain, 11 Eastern every day. Don's going to be there. There's not many things nowadays that you can count on like clockwork like that. And so you've created that sense where you very, very practically show your audience how much you value them. That's the first driver of engagement. That's the first reason why people show up here day in and day out. Let me get your thoughts. Do you agree with that?
Well, I want to thank you, first of all, for that generous um, gesture of identifying what's going on, why it's going on. And, I learn from so many people every day. I mean, not only do I have done these shows, but I've watched other people's shows and commented, and I've watched other people's replays, and that's on a daily basis. And you have to get better to bring more value, uh, you know, to your people, right? You've got to be learning in order to be teaching, but you've also got to be open to learning from the group you're teaching.
Right.
And that's you get exponential benefit. In a disenfranchised, disengaged world, the way to engage is to use something that's cost and time efficient. Now, when we talk about companies and they're faced with all these new challenges, and employees or team members are faced with the same challenges on the other side of the coin, usually the disconnect is lack of quality in time information. Right? Someone told you that they just told them that this is how things are going to go, or you get some sort of update, that change in policy or whatever it is, or you even read it in the newspaper before you even knew it was happening. I think things like live streaming and LinkedIn make so much sense, just like there was an internet and an intranet. right? A lot of companies had communication systems that were just totally internal and protected from the outside world.
Right. Right.
Well, if you're a company and a company that wants to do better, knowledge share, sense of urgency combined can really make a difference. So let's just take a fashion company.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they got 200 designers around the world. So why not have a Tuesday weekly or every other week designer live stream? And everybody could support each other. But more importantly, here's what I learned on saving some time. Here's what I learned in gaining a client. Why not bring the what you say is one of the biggest investments a company or a company owner could make is getting a better return on the time and investment applied to the employee. And why not, instead of being you and a big bunch of people, that somehow you send ambassadors out there, people visiting places, and most of that stuff is all get it ready for them and don't worry about it after they're gone type of stuff.
Yeah.
To harness all of this creativity and innovation among the people doing the job with the people doing the job. And then Wednesday, you could have a shareholder call that the founder can do something. And then on Monday, you have a client show to explain your product or whatever. So you can create. The beauty of it is it costs nothing to be on here, relatively speaking. You know, if you're buying a Super Bowl ad, then hey, you know, that's a whole different story. But if you're throwing $30 at Restream and $20 here and $30 there, for $80, you got a license to fly, you got a voice, you got a microphone. And why would I ever sit around thinking of what to do when I can actually be doing it? And you know, if it's all how you look at it. Everybody has habits every day they do pretty much the same way. Brush your teeth, wake up. I mean, you just do it. You don't think about it.
Yep.
But how many times can you create a habit that can bring so much value by having a show like this, by expressing yourself? And you know what's so fascinating? You don't know what you're going to say until you say it, because the other person just made you think of it. And when you hear it, you're hearing it as fast and for the first time as anybody else.
Yeah.
So not only do you learn from other people's conversation, you learn from yourself, you learn from Khan. But here's another thing. If you want to know Khan better, get his book, right? Because that'll give you more depth, more richness, and it'll give you a great experience over that period of time that it takes you to read it or listen to it. And then when you see Khan, you see him differently, right? And isn't that valuable to get just a really cool group of people you know really well before you have to do anything with them? But that may have the better competitive advantage. And that's what we're talking here. Companies and founders who are visionaries, see value in what Khan put together, will be a step or two ahead in the competition, which is now being significant. Well, before I turn it over, Carl says, Khan, what do you think about employers helping with housing, training, insurance, and other benefits as recruitment and retention incentives? And one more with Beverly, who's here every Tuesday, the Women's Empowerment event. Hey, Doc, I'm looking forward to the conversation. Well, Carl makes a really good point. Thank you, Beverly. And there have been companies like Starbucks was very generous with health benefits, you know, in order to attract part-time people. What's your thoughts, Con?
I think these are wonderful tools to be able to express a more important thought, which is, if I'm going to express how much I value somebody, these are the ways that I can do it in very practical terms. The challenge that I see and the difference between those that use these tools successfully versus those that use these tools and then really fall flat and have the opposite effect is the conversation that needs to be happening. It's the culture that you build around these tools. If I'm a business leader that says, okay, you know what? I'm realizing that times are a little tough right now. Things are a little bit, I can't maybe give people as much of a salary bump as I would like, but I could potentially renegotiate my health insurance, or certain other offerings that we need to give to people in order to express how much we appreciate and value them and how much we want to set them up for success so they can be key parts of our job. When you have those kind of conversations, often what I call stay interviews rather than exit interviews, those conversations go a long way. Unfortunately, too many companies just want to check the box. They saw that this works for somebody else. Without thinking about it, they just mandate, go ahead, do that so we can compete. Well, if you just throw money at a situation or a benefit like this or promotions or whatever else without the conversation that needs to go with it, the context, all you're doing is creating a transactional relationship and a quid pro quo. That way, you're teaching your people that if they gripe long enough or if they threaten to leave, you're going to up the ante. And that's not a healthy environment. That's a toxic environment. So that to me is the answer. These things are wonderful parts of a broader strategy to communicate with your people and build those relationships where you can say, I truly value you, and here's what I can do to help you. I mean, we have here, I live like you in this beautiful state of Colorado. When we go up the mountain towns up there are struggling. Why? Because everybody wants to go up to the mountains in the winter because of the skiing, in the summertime because of all the beautiful activities. They have such a hard time keeping staff up there for the hotels, for the restaurants, for the bars, for all the different things up there because people can't afford to live there because they've been priced out of that. The working class up there has been priced out of that. So smart entrepreneurs, smart business owners are trying to create these exact kind of scenarios that Carl's describing with housing, with offering different benefits from that to attract people to offset the cost of living up there so they can make it a win-win for their people and for the business. It's the only way they can compete up there. And that's what you need to do. Look at it as a win-win.
Yeah, well, I think along with some of these valuable points you just brought up, is that there's a point where being an employer and employee doesn't make sense in a traditional sense. And if you want to retain people, you have to give them some vested interest in what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's pay for performance, whether that's sharing in the profits, because, it has to come from a customer. Right? The end user who pays for everything and everybody has to keep generating that activity.
Correct.
Well, from a business owner standpoint, they have to continue to provide more value in order to price higher.
Yep.
And in order to create that value, they have to have their whole workforce in on it.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. So let's take that for a second, Don, because that's the second driver of engagement. And we talk about connection. There's a couple of things that you mentioned there, because I'm going to tie it back to something that you said in the previous segment, in the previous section here that we talked about. You brought up the example how a powerful tool like LinkedIn Live can operate almost internally to an organization to enhance internal communication and connection. So when you look at that, connection is that second driver, the power of connection, feeding that need, addressing that need of people to feel connected. LinkedIn Live can do that. They can connect people through this in the audience together. So all we're trying to do is use technology to enhance the human connection. That's what I call the leadership paradox, or an example of it. High tech, high touch. You bring them together, and now you're reaching across the world simultaneously to an audience that is now feeling connected. Our audience can look at us. They can comment with each other. They can express themselves on here. We are connected, even though we may be at the four corners of the map right now. So that level of connection can happen through this medium. And that's an important part throughout our company. When you're talking about the example of connection between employees and the results that the business owner wants to get, show people how their work makes a difference. Show them how they can be successful while helping the team succeed. When people realize that, you know what, hey, I can truly achieve my professional goals, whether that's the money that I want to make, the promotion that I want to get, the recognition that I want to see, the difference that I want to make, If I can do that within your company, why would I go elsewhere? The problem is that most people leave because they don't see themselves succeeding inside your company. I mean, how many times have you shared those stories with the staff that you had, and how you put their needs, their professional goals as part of your strategy within your business? You gave people the room to connect, to succeed, to align themselves with the organization's success. Why? Because they could see themselves succeeding inside your company, Don. And how much easier was it for you to retain your best and brightest and not have to worry about, oh my God, people are leaving in droves. How am I going to replace them? It's going to cost me so much. It's going to cost you almost twice as much of their annual salary to replace that person. But here you are with a stable workforce. Why? People don't have to leave. They can be successful. They feel connected to what you're doing. It has meaning for them. I mean, this generation's here, the younger generations in the workforce want to find meaning. They need to know that what they're doing matters. And that ultimately will lead us to the next driver, which is being productive, feeling like you're contributing. But before we go there, your thoughts. I mean, share with us your experience with your businesses.
I always started with nothing. So I was always a bootstrapper. And when you don't have anything, all you have is yourself to start with, and then your next person,
Mhm.
right? And then you build with people, and you build to a point where it is family. You know, when they say family businesses, it's not just blood relatives.
Mhm.
You know, in all my businesses, I had the majority were there over 15 years. The majority. Some were there 30 years at the end. Why? We knew each other's families. We saw people grow up. And you know what? There's defined benefits and compensation, and there's conditional compensation.
Right.
And I think the difference is anybody had a funeral, they know they'd have tickets. If anybody needed a little bit more to get that house, they know it would be there. You know, and you can't be a friend to somebody and a team player, and it's all about the company and how they can contribute.
Right.
It's knowing that, hey, if I get into a jam, I'm covered, right? And if something changes, I can make a difference in a new position, right? Because it was always like, I'll give you an example. I had a gentleman who came in, was from actually Pakistan,
Hmm.
didn't know the culture, didn't know the language, but anyways, he knew business and retail and things like that. So hired him just to be stock person, keeping the displays, right? Within a year, he was making 100,000 a year because he took over the e-commerce side from the beginning with me.
Hmm.
And it didn't matter where you started. It mattered how far you wanted to get from your start. I mean, how many people say, I hate starting at the beginning at the lowest rate? I said, well, you're only there as long as you want to be, right? That's where you start. It's not where you finish. So I think getting to know everybody, them getting to know you, because that's something someone can't offer.
Right.
They can't offer family. People want stability. People want someone who's going to be there with them, for them, and has communication along the way. Most people get isolated, get insulated, and then they just drop off. And then they see everybody else dropping off every year or two. And if it's one thing to retain a person, it's another thing to retain the team.
Mm.
And if you're always switching people, who you're going to get to know and why bother, and why would they want to get to know you? And you got to get to know somebody to get to know somebody is why? What are you here for? What would satisfy you? What's your goal? And maybe we can make it happen. And I think that's the key is people don't want to be alone. And I think Con makes an excellent point. The price of recruiting, hiring, training, retaining, and then they're gone. And you're starting at square one again. And you didn't know what you could have done better, how you're going to do better on square two.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. Plus, the other thing is you got to be the example of what you want them to be. Right? When I had my companies, I didn't have any parking spaces. Everybody could carry their garbage to the end of the hall when it was full.
Mm.
And you treat people as people, and the everybody has value as a person.
Right.
And it doesn't require a lot for people to know you don't do that here. I don't care how much you sell or what you're worth. And when you do show yourself, that short-term profitability isn't as important as long-term opportunity.
Mm.
And then you show people's examples of, hey, this person came in like this. Look at them. You could be that person. So real quick, Omar, who is always the quiz guy, has Zoom party. My grandson was on it, did well. Thank you, Omar. Don and Con, only one letter difference. Omar's a tutor for a lot of people. He's into kids' education, and he does all this volunteer stuff for his shows just to be helpful. So, Con, it looks like a lot of what you're saying is what so many people aren't aware of on how to. I think everybody's aware of the issues, the problems, because they're dealing with them. But if they only knew they could get right to answers from you, from your book, and start applying them. Because again, what is the risk? What's the investment in Con's book or in getting to know Con, and hopefully getting to work with Con if you have something that's significant and needs the proper attention. So, Con?
Yeah, and when you talk about investments like that, Don, I mean, whether it's $10 for a Kindle or $20 for a paperback book, what is it really costing you? I mean, you look at the cost. People think that we talk about, helping people feel valued or helping people feel connected, and they start rolling their eyes. I've talked to business owners that look at me and they say, "Well, this is all really nice and touchy-feely and everything else," until I pull out the numbers and I start explaining to them that, do you realize that 34% of the annual salary of a disengaged employee is the equivalent of the lost productivity from that person, the impact that that person has on your business? If you're paying somebody 30 grand, it's $10,200 in lost productivity on average. These are studies, hard studies, not my numbers. These are studies. And when you look at that and you say, okay, how many people do I have in my workforce that are disengaged? If I have 100 people that work for me, or 10, let's make it simple for the small business owners out there. If I have 10 people out there and 2 of them are disengaged, that's 20% of my workforce. The other 20% that is engaged is not going to make up for that, because that middle ground, depending on which way they go, could sink your entire business, could sink your boat right there. These are hard numbers. I mean, what is your business worth to you? Across the U.S. last year, the lost productivity costs were $350 billion with a B. And when you stretch that out globally into the global economy, it's 7.8 trillion. These are not funny money numbers. These are real. And it's costing business owners tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so to invest in doing the right thing for your people is huge. Now, when you can slash turnover, when you can increase the chances of being more productive and generating more revenue, when people care about the profitability margins and making sure they're not wasteful, and they, like you said, they care enough to take their own trash down the hallway when it's done, that shows engagement in what you're doing. You care about the place that you work with. And you know how you know people care? Think about how you feel Sunday afternoon or Sunday night with the thought that Monday you're going to be at work. If that creates a knot in your stomach, you're working in a really toxic environment. You're having struggles in there, whether you admit it or not. If you're excited to get to work, I know how excited you are for Monday morning to come around, because you're going to be on here again. And you look forward to it. Why? Because you're excited, you're engaged, and it makes a huge difference, Don. These are the things that owners need to look at and really put some numbers to it. If I tell you, you know what, give me $1 and I'll give you 4, any business owner out there will say, I'll take it. But if I tell you, you know what, this is costing you almost $500,000, and I ask you for this much, the 1 in 4, 125,000 to fix this, a lot of owners, if they hear that number, will go, oh my God, I can't pay that. You can't afford not to pay that. That's the problem, because it's going to cost you a lot more in the long run. These are the things that business leaders, the savvy ones, understand. They will invest in their people, but they'll do it in the right way. It's not about throwing money at the solution. It's about creating the right environment. And sometimes that means working with your leadership team and the leaders at all levels of your organization, so they become an extension of you. So they still start creating that environment that we all want to be a part of. I mean, part of the reason why we keep coming back to you every 2 weeks with our collaborative team is because you've created an environment where we can all feel engaged, where we can all feel part of that. We all feel connected to you and to each other, and we support each other. And again, let's transition then to that third driver, the ability to contribute, to make a difference. When you know you can make a difference, Don, you're going to give yourself very differently. I mean, look at volunteers. They don't do it for the money. They do it because of the difference they can make. They freely give of themselves, and they probably work harder at volunteer events than they would in their day job. That makes a big difference. People want to know that what they're doing makes a difference. People want to know, where does my contribution fit into the bigger picture, so I know how I contribute. Whether it's the Pakistani gentleman that came up and took over your e-commerce brand, he knows what he's contributing. As a business leader myself, when I was leading teams of operators, one of the things I told them, you need to understand how you impact the company's P&L. You need to understand the value of your contribution to the bottom line of this operation. For every single one of my people, they need to know what I'm doing here impacts this thing over here. That knowledge and power, that ability to make that connection, to connect the dots, is extremely empowering when you're dealing with people. People want to know. I mean, nobody wants to go out there and just be a pair of hands or a back to kind of lift things up. They want to know that they're going out there, and I get up in the morning excited because I know that what I'm going to do is going to make a difference. I can be productive. I can do something to contribute to my team, to the organization, to my community, to the way that I do things. I make a difference. That's what we're all trying to, the statement that we're all trying to make. I make a difference. And that leads to psychological, emotional health, and a self-confidence and a self-awareness that says, you know what? Hey, I am who I am. I may not be the boss. I may not have a title, but I know what I contribute to this operation. And that's helping your people self-respect and gain that ability to feel positive about being in your operation. Think about the power that you're unleashing there, Don. I mean, you've seen it.
You make some just beautiful points. And one thing that comes to mind, well, a couple things, is it used to be amazing. Auditors used to do their audit every year, and they couldn't believe how low shrinkage was, right? And it was a couple points below what they were used to.
Right.
And I always believe theft is always internal, either because someone took something or someone wasn't paying attention and allowed something to go out the door. So you look at how much is that? Maybe a couple $100,000. Mm-hmm. Well, your people created that savings. How much of that do you want to give back to them? Mm-hmm. You know, when people get more than they're expected because you run better than most, because you have competitive advantages, because you get the benefit of teamwork, of people thinking, how do I do this better? How do I come up with an idea that can save us 1% of this or 2% of this? Or you look at waste, or you look at how come we're going through pencils so fast? I mean, that was something that came up. I'm like, geez, we're buying all these pens. I know it takes me like a year to use up a pen. Mm. And people just weren't being aware. They were taking them home. They were throwing them out. They were losing them. Once we said that, pens got back into normal. But to get something more relatable, if you look at a balance sheet on a business, it's really all tangible stuff, right? Measurable, how many receivables, payables, blah, blah, blah. But you never really take into consideration the intangibles in your company, the safety, the happiness, the joy, the community. I mean, Fridays, my daughter, who worked with me for 8 years, just loved recognition. She'd bring in breakfast from Costco she'd organize bowling every month. We were living together and playing together.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, everybody's grandparents were invited and everybody's friends. It was free bowling, free food, free drink. And everybody started thinking, hey, these people are pretty nice because I'm talking to them. And I'd have so many uncles or grandparents say, I want to thank you for helping Tony out and giving him an opportunity. And he had like ADHD or something or whatever
Right.
it was. And it was so heartfelt. I said, well, these are the people that you want representing your company.
Mm-hmm.
The people who love showing up because they're loved.
Right.
And most companies don't do well because the leaders aren't honest with themselves and honest with their people. It's do as I say, not as I do. I'll be there, but I won't, things like that. So let's get to Carl. I think we covered this. Oh, no, we didn't. Disengaged workers are like a bad apple in a barrel that impacts the morale of everyone. I used to tell people are like elevator buttons. Some take you up, some take you down. And I got to be here every day. And I want to be every day. I want to be able to see you and say, this person's going to make my day and this business better for being here.
Right.
Right. And if I got to look at a prune face and someone that's unhappy, it's going to affect everybody. And you can have a choice. Most people don't do the heavy lifting up front. Right? Don't qualify properly, don't interview properly, don't explain properly. And, everything you do should have a review period, especially if it's something new, just in case, hey, I made a mistake. I didn't know you had these talents, or you've had so much time and it's not working out. And the other thing is having somebody continually with them. It's not like go get them, Tiger, talk to you in 90 days. How do you feel on a new thing when someone just throws you at something? And one last thing, or for at least this segment, how do you treat people who, for the right intentions and purpose, screwed up? And that's a key factor. You tell somebody jump and there'll be someone to catch you. You got to come through. And I'll give you one example. There was this wonderful young lady, couldn't afford to go to college. She's about 19, came into merchant processing, right? Handling, AR stuff and all that other stuff. Anyways, the second week, she made a mistake that cost $8,000 because she didn't handle she gave credit to someone who wasn't fully vetted, right? And everybody like, let's get rid of her. She's gone, right? We can't tolerate that. And I said, well, if it was an $8 mistake, would we be getting rid of her? Same mistake. And they said, no. And I said, well, we're just talking amount. We're not talking anything else. And you know what? I said, no, let's give her another chance. And she was so sorry. And she even volunteered to somehow pay for it, which was never going to happen. And she turned out to be one of the best people we ever had, led the whole department in time. But it was understanding you don't want to be punishing. You want to be incentivized, whatever. So, Con, I'll swing it back to you before I get too tongue-tied.
No, I believe that was a huge incentive for her to do better. That's truly correcting things. And to me, the way that I look at that was an $8,000 investment in her learning and development. That's basically what it was. That was an $8,000 lesson right now. And that is a great transition into the fourth driver that we want to talk about. People they have the need to learn and grow. I explained to a lot of my clients and the people that I work with, I said, water is a life force. Water is something that we all need, all living beings need from that perspective. But the difference between a swamp and a river is how the water flows, if it's stagnant or not. And when you allow things to get too stagnant in your operation, it's no longer a flowing river. It's truly a swamp at that point. And that's part of the challenge that we need to make sure that we address with people. When people know and they understand that they can come to your organization and they can continue to develop, to grow, to become something more according to their goals. You have a career path, you invest in them, whether it's formal training or on the job training, like you provided to a lot of these people through that experience, or mentoring and coaching. I mean, you've done it yourself and you've taught others how to mentor and coach throughout your businesses. I mean, what are we doing here? We're providing learning opportunities. I believe are lifelong learners, and we walk away from every LinkedIn Live a little bit smarter than when we walked in, whether it's because something that another guest said, whether it's something, a question, a smart comment or a smart question from the audience that really got us thinking differently. That's the power of truly feeling engaged, because there's movement, there's growth. So these are the important things. Even if you're on the right track, you're going to get run over if you're not moving in the right direction. You got to have that movement. You got to show some growth. And even for the members of your team, I mean, you are at a point now in your career, you don't have to be out here, but you're giving freely because it's your way of continuing to learn and grow by leaving a legacy behind, by starting a whole movement now to see how we can go forward with this LinkedIn Live as a medium. I mean, you've started a movement with this. You're engaging with people and you're showing them how they can put this into their strategy. So these areas, these 4 drivers apply into businesses where you're trying to create a team, into the little sports teams, the soccer teams that I coach, into the audience development here on LinkedIn Live. I work in schools and higher ed. I work with higher ed professionals, and I tell them, your students are your audience. How are you engaging them? How are you engaging the people out there that you expect to be your quote unquote customers, because they're giving you good money to be here? So how are you truly engaging? How are you meeting their needs? How are you showing them they're valued? How are you making them feel connected to what they're trying to do? How are you going to help them feel productive and like they're contributing? And how are you going to help them continue to learn and grow to fulfill their aspirations? It's universal. This is the beauty of it, Don. These are human needs that we have, and they apply in so many different contexts. Here on LinkedIn Live with our business strategy, with teams of business people, with sports teams, with classrooms across the globe. I mean, even in hospitals, how are you treating your patients from that piece? How, beyond their physical needs, how are you dealing with their other needs, with the family members? I mean, there's so much that goes into the thought process of a successful operation, of a successful business. And one of those key things is, how are you going to engage your audience? The blueprint is there. That's what the book is all about. It's about answering those questions, providing a framework for performance and a blueprint to engage the people and win their hearts and minds.
Well, it sure is a lot. And what I like about our discussion today and the discussions leading up to this is that in most cases, someone writes a book and they'll tell you all about themselves. Other cases, you go a little deeper, they tell you about themselves and they tell you about their book. But if you really want to get connected and engaged with that audience of people who might have an interest or have an interest in your book, it's giving them what's underneath it. Why is this necessary for people to read, instead of just what it is or who I am? And when you give something to somebody that they see so clearly is a benefit or a value, it takes the sales out of it. And if you have the confidence in your product or service that you know when it's experienced, it will more than justify the money. Because like you say, it's not the money, $10, $20, and I'm not minimizing anything as far as money. It's the time. Will someone read it? 90% of the people never get past the first chapter of a book. And so the key is, will they put the 6-7 hours? Will they sustain themselves to move through the whole book? But here's what's so cool. If they know they're going to see you, if they know they're going to be with you, they're going to want to finish the book. So if you make that readership audience a community, and you can build some family into it, right? And that's really what I would do, is you start at the basics and say, I want to recognize these few people who bought the book,
Right.
Or here's a story I got from someone who read the book, because the more third party, the more support you have outside of yourself. And we're teaching people. The other thing, when you think of 500 shows, 700 shows, it was so easy because it was like 120 with Kelly, right?
Right.
80 with Harvey, and after a while, how would I talk to Con every week like this in this period of time? Wouldn't happen. Might meet here or there, but even then it's like on our way and going somewhere versus sitting down. And here's the thing: who do you want to talk with? Who do you feel could benefit you, and in turn you share enough value to justify that?
Mm.
That's your opportunity, because there's a billion people here. Now you could say I want Jim Smith, and I could say I can get you John Jones, who does exactly what Jim Smith does, right? So if someone can identify, here's a person I'd love to talk to, here's a person I'd love to do a show with. Well, in the past is like, well, go find them. Now they're already there, waiting for someone to invite them, and ultimately, hopefully, waiting for themselves to say, I'm tired of waiting. I'm going to do my own show, and I'm going to pick my own community. And here's the rub: is, can you build community? Can you identify prospective people to join your show, to see how you respond and how they react, in order to invite them to another level of interaction? And you test people to see how far will they go. The other thing, I'll give credit to the audience, all of these people were persistent and persevered and are still here. I can give you twice as many names of people who were here, did a show, got excited, and lost interest. It's the ones who are standing at the end of the game that get all the victory. Beverly says, and Beverly's just amazing. She's a therapist, but she's a coach to women over 50 who are going through some significant transition. And, the other thing is, she's a good friend to everybody.
Yeah.
And I think everybody loves the idea, hey, you're still a friend, or you're a good friend, whatever else you can help me with. What an empowering conversation. The takeaway is that everyone is important. Doesn't matter the size of the organization. If you don't feel you're a somebody, you won't give back. LinkedIn Live helps invite engagement. It opens up to more connections. And we're in rarefied air because nobody not only knows how to do this, everybody feels the blockages are just too great to overcome. And I think that's where you need best practices. That's where you need a collaboration group. That's where you need training wheels if you're going to do your first show, and knowing that no one's going to let you fail or fall. And what you find out, there was never failure or falling ever as a result. And once you decide, hey, wow, I was worried about nothing, I should have been doing this a long time ago, you want to make up for lost time. It's like, how do I get into the fast lane? And how do I learn to fly? So, Con, I think this has been such an exciting conversation. We're already 54 minutes into it, and it's amazing how fast this thing can fly once you genuinely feel and project excitement. They say it's always your music, never your words, that get people motivated. And they also say, I was watching a show, if you don't start a show excited, your audience isn't going to be excited. And if you don't care to be here, why would they?
Right.
And, I think that's so important. And, be the person that when you walk in the door, people are excited to see you. That means something. And, when I look at retirement, what is retirement? From where to what? And what LinkedIn and live streaming has allowed me to do is extend my career of doing what I've done for all my previous career, but now apply it to something that's so much easier, faster, and more convenient. Because who's going to go to an office every day? Who's going to jump on a plane 4 days a week? But hey, if it's just, hey, my friends are there. When I was a kid, I loved baseball. And as soon as I woke up in the summer, I ran to the field, and I stayed there until I had to eat something to run home and get something and go back to the field. And when I look at this, it's like, hey, there's friends that on the field. Let's play, let's learn, let's grow. How could you beat that versus being the receiver of just about anything that comes your way? And I think a lot of times you got to put blinders on,
Right.
right? I heard that the last things you want to do is focus on things you have no control over or the past, right? If you're
Right.
focused on the future and things you can do, you're in a much better position than other people. So, Con, I think this was great. You covered the four elements and you did it so well to kind of intertwine it with the topic today and the audience. And I think, it's like marrying art with science live stream. You get a little of that creative part, but you also have purpose and good quality value that people can appreciate and see. So, Con,
So, final thoughts on this one. It's like you said, time flew by today, but there's so much applicability, and that's part of what makes it so exciting for me because connecting those dots, seeing the relationship between what we're doing, that's so key. Regardless of what your strategy is to reach people, to engage with people, it's important to understand. There's an expression that I use towards the end of the booking, the closing chapters, and the expression is very common. I mean, part of the reason what made a lot of people pick up and leave from where they were going, everybody thought that the grass is greener on the other side because they weren't getting their needs met here, and automatically they assume, hey, I need to go over there because whatever I'm looking for, if it's not here, it must be over there. Well, the truth of the matter is the grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. And that's what people need to understand. When you give lots of TLC, when you pay attention to what you're doing and the medium that you choose, pick a strategy, pick a lane. If LinkedIn Live is right for you, choose that medium as part of your strategy and give it some love. Give it, water that garden and see how it can grow, it can get greener, how you can cultivate a community and an audience that wants to show up with you. But you got to give it that love and attention. It's not just going to happen automatically. You can't go anywhere and things happen without you putting effort into it. So you got to choose and make this not just the exclusive thing, but part of your overall strategy, because you want to be able to reach people where they are and engage with people in a lot of different ways. And so this is one of the most powerful things that we can do. And it's part of the overall thing. You are finding success, Don, within the structure of LinkedIn. Now, if you weren't, you'd have to go elsewhere, right? That's for the part that we're talking about. But you can find success here, and you are using the existing infrastructure. You've been invited in. LinkedIn said, you know what? Hey, we're going to bring the bucket. You fill up the bucket with your content, with your knowledge, with your expertise. But we'll provide the buckets. You don't have to go out and bring your own. And that's basically what this is. They are providing the road, the infrastructure, the context for us to put our content out there. And then once we do, we each have a special message to say, whether it's you talking about how do you create this as a strategy, or our friend Beverly talking about this important transition in a woman's life that only they can understand. But she's looking to provide answers and experiences and share her wisdom, her knowledge from going through it, but also talking to others that are going through it. To our friend Harvey, who has the wonderful opportunity of building his own expertise in the franchising world and bringing experts from across the globe to speak on this important topic, who has an audience of people that are interested in franchising in all its dimensions. For our friend Kelly, who's out there empowering other people through her work here with you and the awesome journey and the other work that she does with Christy, with her partner, and making a difference out in the world for all of us that are struggling with mental health in the veterans community. To our friend Carl, who's finding answers to the most basic and fundamental questions that a business owner may have. How can I fund my business to operate, to grow, to get beyond that? I mean, how do I put that fuel in my tank? For all of us and all the others that are coming on board, for Dave that's now trying to identify himself within our community, we are all looking to be able to communicate a message. We know we have the message inside us. We have the content. It's about finding the context. And right now, LinkedIn Live is where we're at.
I couldn't have said it better, and I sure appreciate you saying it, and especially everything we're doing has happened just in the last year. Most of the programming has happened in the last 6 months, and the group only started 2 or 3 months ago. So fast forward 6 months with more shows, more experiences, more best practices, more knowledge share.
Mhm.
Where could that take you? And here's the other thing that's so important is there so much repurposing and residual benefit that one gets. I mean, this show, when we get to the point and we're gearing towards that,
Mhm.
is this created probably 7 or 8 remarkable, outstanding statements by Khan about the book. That if you could parse 50 seconds of it, 30 seconds of it, and what I see and I envision, and that's the good thing about taking it one step at a time, if you have the opportunity to take one step at a time, is this book of Khan's just launched. It'd be great to have a continuing discussion on it
Mhm.
as to how it's doing, what we're learning from it, because there's book writers out there in you.
Mhm.
There's people who may say, hey, if I can pick up a couple clues from Khan, maybe I can get my book going. So helping one helps yourself.
Yep.
Being here today now may have inspired you to take action, might have inspired you to new action, or might have inspired you to say, why don't I go to doncohenconsulting.com and learn what these new starter programs, because they're phenomenally priced, and you would be coming in with people who are already there doing things.
Mhm.
And you've already been in the audience. But here's the other thing. If you know somebody that deserves and needs a show, needs to learn better about LinkedIn strategy and best practices, needs to get some training wheels to get going, or just needs a conversation. I know Con and Beverly and everybody, if you're aligned and you're sincere, you can get 15, 20 minutes of anybody's time. So you can buy some bells, you could get to know people, and really at a certain point, time waits for nobody. You shouldn't have to wait for time. Make it happen. There's a saying, if you don't have time to do it right, do you have time to do it over again? And I'd rather do it right from the beginning, build on rock and not on sand, build with people that just their association and their influence. You couldn't get time with me and Con and all these other people for what we're offering, because what we want to do, to Con's book and Con's point, we want to invest in you
Mhm.
in order for you to invest in yourself and then be able to invest in the people who got you here. So anyways, there's a plan to it. It's only getting better. If we weren't 103, I'd tell you some more good stuff. And because of that, we'll be back here Monday with Kelly. A last comment from Beverly. Marvelous comment. What a powerful and insightful message. And one thing I will say for Beverly and all these people, they're sincere.
Mhm.
They wouldn't say something if they didn't believe it. They wouldn't put themselves out there for Con to recognize they bought his book. They registered for something. And, that means something, that, hey, just knowing me, they're supporting me. And not only are they doing it, they're sharing it with everybody else that they're doing it with, which may say, hey, if Carl bought a book, if Harvey bought a book, then why not be in the same boat with Harvey and Carl? So when I see him, we could talk. Or even, here's even a better thing. When Con comes back next week, you could say what I learned from Con's book, what I enjoyed about Con's book, because Con is waiting there hoping for feedback,
Mhm.
for things maybe he wasn't aware of, and that will help all of us. So thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. Be safe. Come back Monday. We'll definitely be here for you again. And besides that,